everywhere. GBS.
We are living in a world where a lot of commotion is happening, catastrophes, coups and disasters, not forgetting the massive waves of power change and elections, just to mention a few. And with all the premeditated narratives, one needs to find a place of peace and tranquility. GBS Ambassador will be here to help you take away the noise and the misinterpretation that seek to pull us apart, giving you hope, happiness and a pure mindset across Africa and the world at large. Good afternoon. This is the Ambassador, and I'm your Ambassador, Jennifer Makau. The US and the UK condemned Iran's attack on Israel as tensions in the Middle East continue to escalate, while the United States in particular provided assistance to Israel in intercepting dozens of drones and missiles launched by Iran. And as Sudan marked 1 year into war, that is on 15th April, top diplomats met in Paris to mobilize aid for Sudan with more than 10 million in need of assistance. And Lagos marked the 10th anniversary of Chibok kidnapping. That's 10 years that have passed since that fateful night when the darkness descended upon the Nigerian village of Chibok on April 14, 2014. And at least 58 people have been killed by the 2-week floods in Tanzania as heavy rains continue to persist in the East African country. Experts across Africa convened in Kinshasa to coordinate efforts against the monkeypox. We have this and more lined up for you in the Ambassador News at 1 p.m. Stay tuned with us. And now, as we get to the start, tensions in the Middle East continue to escalate as the United States and the United Kingdom condemn Iran's recent attack on Israel. During an emergency session in the United Nations Security Council on Sunday, both nations voiced their condemnation and concern over unprecedented assault. The condemnation following a direct military assault by Iran on Israel, marking a significant increase in the existing ongoing conflict. The United States, in particular, provided assistance to Israel in intercepting the dozens of drones and missiles launched by Iran. Here is a report on the same. Both the UK and the US condemned Iran's attack on Israel during an emergency meeting on the UN Security Council on Sunday. It comes as the US assisted Israel in shooting down dozens of drones and missiles fired by Iran in what was the first time it had launched a direct military assault on Israel. Israeli authorities stated that 99% of the inbound weapons were shot down without causing any significant damage. The United States condemned in the strongest terms the unprecedented attack on the state of Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran and its militant proxies and partners.
The United States condemns in the strongest terms the unprecedented attack on the state of Israel by the Islamic Republic of Iran and its militant proxies and partners. Iran's intent was to cause significant damage and death in Israel. It launched over 300 munitions, including more than 100 ballistic missiles and land attack cruise missiles at Israel, as well as explosive unmanned aerial vehicles. Iran's reckless actions not only posed a threat to populations in Israel, but also to other UN member states in the region, including Jordan and Iraq.
They urged members to unequivocally condemn the Iran's aggressive actions and call on Tehran and its partners and proxies to stop their attacks in the region. Barbara Woodward, a UK ambassador to the UN, echoed the condemnation of the attack.
No one wants to see further bloodshed. The United Kingdom is also continuing to work urgently alongside the international community to stabilise the situation and prevent further escalation. It is vital that all parties exercise maximum restraint and refrain from any action that may heighten tensions.
The scale and the nature of Iran's heinous assault, the first direct attack from Iran on Israeli soil, poses grave risks to the security and the stability of the citizens across the region. The conflict in Sudan has escalated to a critical point, with millions of lives at risk due to famine and violence. Diplomats and the aid groups gathered in Paris to address the urgent humanitarian crisis. And despite the UN $2.7 billion appeal, the majority of funding still remained unmet, leaving millions of Sudanese vulnerable. The conflict, which began on last April between the military and the paramilitary forces, led to the widespread of atrocity, including killings, displacements and rape, particularly in the capital of the city of the Darfur region, with food destruction and distribution of the networks being disrupted, leaving Sudanese facing the looming threat of massive starvation, with hundreds of thousands of the risk of malnutrition-related deaths. Here is the report.
The first thing that we have to do is to make sure that Sudan is not forgotten. Today, the people caught in this emergency are almost completely invisible. Other devastating crises have overtaken the news from around the world. 1 year since the war broke out, Sudan is in a state of collapse. The country has turned into one of the worst humanitarian disasters ever on the African continent.
Our first objective is mobilizing humanitarian funding. There is an emergency because the United Nations response plan is not funded. It is only 5% funded.
We hope they find the solution to the 12-year dispute. And moving on, 10 years have passed since the fateful night when the darkness descended upon the Nigerian village of Chibok. That was on April 14, 2014, as the Islamic extremists stormed to the government girls' secondary school in the Chibok community in Borno State and abducted nearly 300 girls who were preparing for science exams on Sunday. Campaigners and those affected by the event gathered in Lagos to mark the 10th anniversary of the kidnapping, calling for nearly 100 girls still in captivity to be freed. Some of the abducted girls escaped, while some of the released came back as either parents, widows, or injured. The Chibok kidnapping was the first major school abduction in the West African nation. Ivy Maven with the report.
Some of the abducted girls escaped while some were released and came back either as parents, widows, or some injured. The Chibok kidnapping was the first major school abduction in the West African nation. Today, survivors like Grace Dauda and Rebecca Malam shared their stories of resilience amidst the trauma. Dauda, who spent 3 years in captivity, recounts the challenges of recovering from her ordeal, undergoing multiple surgeries to heal injuries sustained during the captivity. Despite the hardships, she found solace in education, seizing the opportunity to study in America after her 4th surgery.
Because in 10 years, I spent 3 years in the captivity. So when I came back, my leg broke on our way to since the very day we were kidnapped. So I was struggling with my leg there. After I came back, I underwent surgery 4 times.
Then, at least 1,500 students have been kidnapped as armed groups increasingly find in them a lucrative way to fund other crimes and control villages in the nation's mineral-rich but poorly politicized northwestern region.
After that incident, I have not recovered. My family has not recovered mentally, financially. We have not recovered. We are still struggling. I always have flashback, and even when I'm sleeping at night, sometimes I'm unable to sleep most nights. Like I'm always awake at night.
like the Islamic extremists that staged the Chibok kidnapping, the criminal gangs terrorizing villages in northwestern Nigeria, are mostly former headsmen who conflicted with most farming host committees, according to the authorities. Aided by arms smuggled through Nigeria's porous borders, they operate with no centralized leadership structure and launch attacks driven mostly by economic motives. Ivy Maven, GBS News.
Floods have killed 58 people in Tanzania during the last 2 weeks, according to the government, as the heavy rains persist in the East African country. The coastal region was hit hardest, with over 1,000 people affected, according to the government. Government spokesperson Mobare Matinyi stated on Sunday that essential supplies, including food, had been distributed to those affected as Tanzania plans to construct 14 dams to prevent flooding in the near future. East Africa is experiencing heavy rains, with reported flooding in the neighboring Kenya killing at least 13 people so far, while the western and the central region flooding has displaced thousands from their homes. Infrastructure has also been damaged, and those living in the flood-prone areas are being urged to move. The rains are expected to reach their peak towards the end of the March of April. Well, we wish the best for the Tanzanian people who are going through the flooding catastrophe. And moving on, in a unified effort to address the escalating threat posed by the monkeypox virus, experts from across Africa convened in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, to bolster in the continent's response strategies, spearheaded by the World Health Organization, that is the WHO, and the Africa CDC, with approximately 250 specialists gathered in April 13th to devise a comprehensive tactic aimed to containing the spreading of the disease within the African region. Let's get more details.
Iran's reckless actions not only posed a threat to populations in Israel, but also to other UN member states in the region, including Jordan and Iraq. The Security Council has an obligation to not let Iran's actions go unanswered. Indeed, for far too long, Iran has flagrantly violated its international legal obligations, notably through the actions of its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. By arming Hezbollah in violation of Security Council Resolution 1701, will be held responsible.
Is no different than Adolf Hitler. Hitler's Third Reich was envisioned to be a 1,000-year empire stretching across continents, just as Khamenei envisions his radical Shiite hegemony to stretch across the region and beyond. Instead of shouting Sieg Heil, these radical Nazi Islamists scream death to Israel, death to America, death to England. And just yesterday, Iran seized a Portuguese cargo ship. The crew being held right now by Iran includes Indian, Filipino, Pakistani, and Russian nationals. Iran threatens global maritime trade. Iran is not only a terror state, Iran is a pirate state.
Now is the time for maximum restraint. According to the latest reports, Iran launched hundreds of drones and missiles from its territory towards Israel, with most intercepted. Several missiles reportedly struck within Israeli territory, one of which damaged an Israeli military facility in the south of the country, and overall, a few civilians were injured. It's time to step back from the brink. It's vital to avoid any action that could lead to major military confrontations on multiple fronts in the Middle East. Civilians are already bearing the brunt and paying the highest price. And we have a shared responsibility to actively engage all parties concerned to prevent.
And that international news brings us to our first break. There is more coming up for you. We'll talk about Israel, who associated Iran to be no different than the Third Reich. We'll also get to see about the case of Amanda Knox, whose saga continues to unfold concerning a murder case, and the American artist and an author, that is Faith Ringgold, who died at the age of 93. We'll also talk about the Rwanda fencing sport and the Uganda professional upcoming wrestling dream, and also we'll get to talk about the Paris 2024 Olympics. We have this and more lined up for you shortly after the break. Stay tuned with us.
It has been a life full of tears.
Tulikuwa tunajua hata kwa nyako. Tukateseka na mama.
Pain, agony and desperation, with the slightest bit of hope almost gone.
Sina baba wala mama na sina mtu wa kunisaidia. Ninapitia maisha magumu sana.
But with a tender touch from a few who care and beckoned a smile to wipe away our tears, our faces are now lit up in ever-blazing hope. As we join hearts and delight together with all of you for reminding us that God cares.
Everywhere, GBS.
Welcome back. You are still watching the GBS, The Ambassador Global News, and we are glad to have you join us today. Now, as we continue, Israel Permanent Representative to the United Nations, that is Gilad Erdan, compared Iran to the Third Reich and Supreme Leader, that is Antonia Ali Khamenei, to Hitler during an explosive emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council on Sunday. On Saturday, Iran launched a barrage of drones and missiles towards Israel, which stated was retaliation for an alleged Israel strike on its consulate on Damascus earlier this month, killing a number of Iranian military commanders. Israel, which is not claimed to be responsible for the earlier Syrian strike, reported more than 300 incoming projectiles, that is on Saturday, while stating 99% were intercepted, with no confirmed fatalities except a 7-year-old girl.
Just recently in the DRC, for the first time, we observed sexual transmissions of monkeypox, the Central African species. And so, if we take this sexual heterosexual transmission, we take the severity of this disease, and almost every province will be affected. It's a public health emergency. Facilitate capacity building for preparedness and response so as to mitigate the impact of mpox in Africa and beyond, to strengthen effective surveillance, national laboratory capacity, rapid epidemic response, and engagement with affected communities.
That we are going to work on many aspects of the subject. We'll be working starting at the country level. And in countries, let me assure you, we are present at the subnational level, working with governments also in the capitals to take forward this agenda.
Let's check on the legal saga that has continued to unfold years after a murder case that captured the global attention. We are talking of Amanda Knox, once accused and later acquitted of the murder of her roommate, that is Meredith Kecha in Italy, is currently facing a slander trial for wrongly accusing a man of the crime. Amanda, now 36-year-old, was found herself back in the legal spotlight, facing trial for the slander accusations in Florence. And though she did not appear in court, she was tried in absentia. The trial revolves around the accusation against a Congolese bar owner, that is Patrick Lumumba, during the investigation into Kecha's murder back in 2007. Knox's initial accusations against Lumumba led to his arrest and detention for nearly 2 weeks before he was released.
Duty of the crime of calumny. She accused Patrick, changing her version, because in the first version, she said she was in Via Garibaldi with her boyfriend, and then the night of the 5th, she goes in the police headquarters, changes her version, she puts herself on the scene of the crime, and after she puts herself at the scene of the crime, she says in a recounting that is very detailed that he is the killer. Let's not forget what the European court said, the type of psychological pressure that Amanda had to live through that terrible day with all those hours of questioning with 20 or 30 persons.
And the art world mourns the loss of an innovator, that is Faith Ringgold, and the renowned American artist and the author who passed away at the age of 93. Ringgold was widely known for her richly colored and detailed quilts that combined painting, textiles, and storytelling, breaking barriers for the black and the female artists. Her assistant Grace Matthews confirmed that she died Friday night at her home in the Eaglewood, that's New Jersey, following a period of falling ill. Ringgold's highly personal wax art can be found in the collections across the United States and beyond. While her journey to prominence was not easy, navigating an art world dominated by white men and a political landscape where black voices, particularly black women, were not often marginalized. And in the hills overlooking Kigali, that is Rwanda, a remarkable transformation has been underway as disadvantaged children found hope and aspiration through the sport of fencing at the Gisimba Memorial Center. Patience Wamugu, a sharp-sighted coach, has dedicated himself to impacting the skills and the knowledge of fencing to his young students as they embrace the terminology of the sport. Here is a report on the same. Despite the challenges they face, including being orphans, refugees, or simply less fortunate, these children eagerly respond to the Patience coaching. Clad in worn-out gears borrowed from the local sports club, they embrace the terminology of the sport, echoing words like allay and engarde with determination. Gisimba Memorial Center, established over 75 years ago, serves as a haven for the children affected by the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis.
After the genocide, this center was instrumental in empowering the orphans, and many grew sports-wise. So I thought to myself, why not volunteer here and share my knowledge with children of this institution that gave so much to them.
It now stands as a beacon of hope for the protection of the children's rights in Rwanda, offering after-school programs aimed at their holistic development. For 9-year-old Holly, it is a dream of representing Rwanda in America, while 8-year-old Roberto sees potential in the sport to provide for his future.
I like this fencing because it makes me happy, and I wish to go to America, to win for my country, Rwanda.
Fencing is a good game and I like it.
That's a remarkable heart coming from Kigali, and now moving on into Uganda. In the heart of Uganda, a unique sporting and a phenomena is taking root, one that is capturing the dreams and the aspirations of the young Ugandans. In the district of Mukono, amidst the mid-morning heat, a makeshift wrestling ring becomes the stage for dreams as young Ugandans, inspired by the larger-than-life spectacles of professional wrestling, gather to showcase their skills in what is known as a soft ground wrestling, emulating their idols from the world of wrestling entertainment, that is the WWE. These teens mimic every move and the sounds they have seen on the television, with some wrestlers like Daphne Sean Kay, with the Kisaye recalling their admiration watching these televised shows and how it sparked her own aspirations to become a emerging wrestler. Here is the report.
In the mid-morning heat, the soil is tilled and waited inside a makeshift wrestling ring as young Ugandans gathered in the district of Mukono to take part in a soft ground wrestling competition. Shortly after, a dramatic announcement hails the arrival of the first contestant. They mimic every move, action, and sound of their famous idol in the World Wrestling Entertainment WWE combat sport. One wrestler, Daphne, commonly known as Sean Kay, was inspired to take part after watching those television shows.
I started watching wrestling in 2019. Then I was like, these guys, they can do that. I was very, very, very amazing. It was very amazing. Even me, I told myself in me, and I said, no, one day I will maybe, if God wishes, if we can be with us Academy Wrestling here in Uganda, one day I will join.
The Uganda Soft Ground Wrestling Group started in 2023 after being founded by Daniel Cedric Bumba, locally known in the wrestling community as Bumbash. The 35-year-old says he has been a wrestling fan since childhood and became what's known as a video jockey after college, offering lively commentary and translating WWE matches into their local Luganda language for fellow viewers. Bumba hopes that some of these wrestlers, many of them orphans, can do well and long enough to go professional.
The dream for this place is to, first of all, to create awareness of the game. I want these students or young Ugandans to pursue their career in pro wrestling and go further to follow their dream, so as they can become professional potential wrestlers in future.
It is the glimmer of a dream with little else in place. The youth pay $26 as a commitment fee for a chance to leave the poverty of Lukono, and the amount is roughly equivalent to 10 days' work by an average construction laborer. According to Bumba, he is yet to find an appropriate training facility and health insurance for participants, a situation which has led him to properly train the participants before engaging them in the real fight.
Injuries we get like this, but it's not serious injuries, right? This game is not dangerous, so that you're used to it and you know how to take landings. Our coach always tells us that safety first.
Some of Bumba's trainees live in a dorm nearby where they have access to weightlifting equipment and occasionally eat together, while others come from their homes to wrestle and watch others fight. Bumba has big ambitions for his organization and hopes to build a professional ring and an academy so that many African youth can enroll in the sport. Maven, GBS News.
And that news brings us to the end of our ambassador, GBS Global News. It's been a pleasure having you on board, joining us to the end. And just to do a recap for you, we've talked about the US and the UK condemnation on the Iran's attack on the Israel, which is connected with the previous attack on the Iran consulate, who are vowed to retaliate, causing more tensions in the Middle East. We'll keep you more updated on the developments. And we've also talked about, you have covered on Sudan, who marked a 1 year of war with more than 10 million All Sudanese children exposed to war zones, not forgetting the impacts including the refugees and the lack of food and necessities, which prompted the 10 diplomats mobilized the nation. We will follow on the same and keep you updated. We've also discussed about the Lagos, the 10th anniversary of the Chibok kidnapping. That is 10 years that have passed now since the fateful night. We'll keep you on the forefront updated on the same. We've also discussed about the Tanzania, that is the heavy rains that have killed 58 people and continue to persist in the East African nation. We'll follow up and keep you acquainted with the developments. And lastly, we've also covered about the DRC. We're talking of the monkeypox virus here that prompted experts from across Africa to convene in Kinshasa and to seek a solution. We'll keep you updated and at the forefront of the same of this development as you keep it at The Ambassador. I've been your ambassador, Jennifer Macau, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the GBS Global News, The Ambassador, tomorrow. Same time, same place, from Monday to Friday at 1 p.m. And may you all have a splendid and the most beautiful afternoon.